So yeah, I've kind of shared a little bit about kind of the early childhood, growing up in East London, the family life, growing up in a big Punjabi family in East London. And then there's that kind of second chapter of my life of trying to figure out who I was, trying to figure out my purpose, and then going into academia, studying history, studying gender studies. And I remember when I wanted to study gender studies, my whole family were like, "What is that? Like, what do you? How can you do a master's in that? What job are you going to get with that?" But I was really fascinated with understanding gender. What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? Or what does it mean to be none of those things? Um, and that master's was really discussing all those different topics, everything from femininity to masculinity to cultural, social, economic issues in our society because of gender. And in that year, I got to write a thesis, a research paper on any topic that I wanted. And I decided to write it on son preference in South Asian communities, which, as we know, is an ongoing issue of why people would prefer to have a son over a daughter. And the research kind of took me to India, took me to Punjab, and that's really what I wanted to focus on, and why specifically in the Punjabi community is this something that's still going on, especially because a lot of the Punjabi community are Sikh, which is meant to be a faith that is built on the principles of gender equality and seeing a man and a woman as the same. That's why we have Kaur and Singh. That's why women are held at such esteem in our faith. But why culturally does it not look that way? And why in Punjab did it have some of the highest rates of female infanticide, which is the killing of baby girls? Why did it have some of the highest rates of sex selective abortions? So that means that people were aborting their baby girls when they recognized the gender. And it just didn't make sense to me. But obviously, a lot of the reasons were economic, cultural, passing on a family name, passing on inheritance. And that is some of the main reasons that came out. And I did this big research paper on it. I even went to a really incredible girls' home in Jalandhar in Punjab called the Unique Girls' Home. I stayed there for 2 weeks to volunteer with them, and they're doing incredible work to support these young baby girls, all the way up until the age of 18, that have been abandoned by their families or left there, or found. And in those 2 weeks that I was there, they had a window where people could drop off a baby, usually at night, because this wouldn't be done during the day because obviously the shame around it. But during the night, they would drop off baby girls that had been found or just left and abandoned. And in those 2 weeks that I was there, we had two baby girls turn up, and it would set off an alarm inside. And I still remember the sound of that alarm going off because it just triggers, okay, a baby has been left. And like till this day, I still can't get my head around it. I'm now the mother of a baby girl, and she's now 3 years old, and she is my whole world. And you are a father of a girl, so you know how much they change your lives, um, and how much they can turn your whole world around for the better. So I can't understand why people would let that go. Um,
How did these people, well, maybe you didn't get to see it or
mm,
ask, but the feeling of leaving a baby in a window.
yeah,
I know you've you described it, but just visualizing
yeah,
what that must feel like.
yeah.
When when you've got no option but to think, I have to leave this baby
I
in a
have to do
window,
this. Yeah.
walk away, cut the emotional cord,
Yeah.
live with the guilt
Yeah.
that this child is now gonna have to face life by themselves,
Yeah.
right? We hear it, but do we even feel it? Do
Yeah.
you understand it?
The reality of what that person must have felt
Just
and
because someone is a girl.
yeah. And the pressure of what that person must have been feeling because of all those issues that we've spoken about. And yes, of course, there's then the statistics around it about how there's now such an unbalanced gender ratio in some of these states where the highest rates of this is happening. So in some places, you've got one girl to every 10 boys. Um, Overall, some of the missing numbers were huge. It's estimated around 60 million missing girls because of this ongoing issue of son preference. That's almost the population of the UK. That's crazy. And of course that's affecting girls. Of course that's affecting the young girls that have been abandoned or missing. And we're going to see that gender imbalance going on. But this also impacts the boys too. I think a lot of people don't recognize that on the flip side, what happens there. What happens when you have too many boys and so little girls?
What
What
does
happens?
happen?
Well, the long-term impact is you then have this very hyper society that's got a small number of women, high number of men. What then happens over a long period of time is some of those dark issues of more harassment, more rape, more confusion for where men should exist in those societies, more confusion around partnerships and relationships of how am I going to find somebody. So there's so many long-term issues. You then have more population issues because people won't be reproducing. And so over time, this is going to continue to become a bigger and bigger issue. And this isn't just a faraway problem. Like everyone assumes, oh, this is just far away in Asia, in Southeast Asia. This doesn't impact us here in the Western world, but it really does.
How?
There's been recent research that came out just this year about how in Indian communities, we still have such a high imbalance of that gender ratio going on here in the UK. So that means people are still having sex selective abortions here in the UK, which is insane. How are people still getting away with that? Um, so the reality of when I talk about these feminist issues and then people turn the other way or they switch off as soon as I start talking about them, this is the reality. It's affecting girls and it's equally affecting young boys. It's going to affect us in the future, economically, socially, politically. Um, that's why I care about it so much. And I recognized back then when I was doing the research that not everyone had the time to read this like 50,000 word paper. I get it. So I summarized it into a poem. And that was actually the first poem I performed on that night. The first one I ever performed was called Queens and Corpses. And it was basically a summary of all that research.
Share that poem with me. I'd love to hear it.
It says, from her, kings are born. She is a creator. It is through her that life evolves. She is our caretaker, yet thousands of little girls were never given such a worth. They've been abandoned at their very birth. Dowry. Why burden ourselves? We shall have sons upon sons upon sons. Our name will last forever. He shall look after us, all of us together. He can take our land, inherit, and all shall be divine. And those corpses of those baby girls, they'll disappear with time.